Let's move to Lane Kiffin and the quarterback position that we have discussed with you, but we're now down to um, the first game of the season, and I understand it doesn't matter that I could play this weekend and they'd beat Mercer, but you know all about these two guys, Jaxson Dart and Spencer Sanders. From being head of recruiting at ESPN, you called Oklahoma State games. Spencer Sanders did not go to Ole Miss to sit. There's all this talk. Dart's better. Obviously, I think we expect most players to get a little bit better incrementally every
Yeah.
year. But I get the sense that you still believe Spencer Sanders, when everything is on the table, that Spencer Sanders, maybe not by miles, but is a better quarterback. So I'm not worried about Mercer, but as this thing plays out and we get into the meat of the schedule, if you had to call it, do you believe it will eventually be Spencer Sanders' job?
If Jackson Dart does not improve his decision making when it comes to taking care of the football, Lane Kiffin's not worried about coaching Jackson Dart's talent. Jackson Dart has a ton of talent. Jackson Dart can make all the throws. He can do everything you want a guy to do. He's got some savvy about his personality, but he has a penchant for taking risks with the football, and Lane's not going to have it. And I remember it happened last year in the first half against Georgia Tech on the road in Atlanta, and Lane was furious with him because of two really poor decisions that he had made in the first half, and they were completely unnecessary decisions. And I can see why he was upset. So the thing with Spencer Sanders, it's the good and the bad. The guy has played a ton of football. I mean, he's thrown for 10,000 yards, right? And so
10,000 yards at
yeah,
Oklahoma State.
yeah, and he can run, and he's a dynamic player. He's just about he's kind of just about seeing everything you could throw at him. The downside is he's hurt a lot, and he played all through last year, very injured, had to miss I think a couple of games, but he wasn't the same guy. I'll give him tough. He is tough. He battles. He fights. I know there were a couple of weeks because I had the Texas Oklahoma State game in Stillwater, and he had played in the previous 2 weeks but did not practice a day. Did not practice, but played in the game.
Wow.
So he's got some toughness, and I love that about him. So I think if he's healthy and Jackson Dart isn't careful with the football, then yeah, Lane Kiffin's going to play him. I don't think you're left with any other choice. And hopefully, from a mature perspective, a maturity perspective, that is really something that Jackson Dart takes ownership of. The decision making, the when to live to play another down, and just don't create negative plays with the offense with your decisions.
Do you think there's another step for Will Rogers? Kevin Barbet's going to run it a little bit more. I do
Yeah.
actually believe that they've got better personnel than they've had around Will since he's been there. He was thrown to the Wolves, and then a bunch of true freshmen had to play around him when Callan Hill threw his fit, and it just wasn't a good transit. Moorhead missed on a lot of kids. Good guy, but he missed bad on a lot of kids. So having said all that, I think that they've somewhat um, reloaded's not the word that I'm looking for, but they've got better personnel around Will. So having said all that, and look, the air raid and Leach and all that were great to Will Rogers and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But do you believe that that he can take another step forward this year?
Yeah, and I think he's going to have to be because I think there will be more asked of him within the scheme. There was all this talk, right, about Sam Hartman at Notre Dame, and what would Sam Hartman be when he wasn't in the slow mesh, heavy RPO based scheme that he was in for 6 years or 5 years at Wake Forest. Well, at the end of the day, Sam Hartman has started 45 games in college football, right? Will Rogers has started a ton of games in
Yeah.
college football. I think that he will adapt fine. Um, I do think maybe some of the progression read stuff that he'll be asked to do will be a little bit different. Um, so much of the original air raid, it wasn't attacking coverage; it was attacking areas of the field. And so I think I wouldn't have too many concerns just because he's played a lot. but he's probably going to be asked to do. He may be asked to do a lot more at the line of scrimmage, both pre and post snap.
Right.
He may be asked to do full field progression reads down to the check down. Like there just may be more on his plate, but it's one thing to say you're going to do that to a freshman and now expect him to make consistent good decisions. But when you're talking about a guy that's played as much ball as Will has, I think you feel pretty confident about it.
No, that's a good point. He started over 30 games, and that's a big deal.
Don't miss one moment of the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Weekdays, 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. on ESPN 105.9. The Zone.